Your angel of death awaits.
All it takes is one bad day.
You've eaten Gotham's wealth, its spirits, but your feast is nearly over.
This is not my home. It's an operating table. And I'm the surgeon.
Why aren't you laughing?
From this moment on, none of you are safe.
Welcome to the Batman Book Club, a podcast exploring the Dark Knight Library. I'm your host, Ryan Lauer. The Batman Book Club is a proud member of the Batman Podcast Network, hosted by Batman on Film. Just go to batmanonfilm.com, click on podcasts, and you'll find the Batman Podcast Network. That is a whole list of other bat-related shows that also like to dive into other nerdy subjects that all of us, especially our leader, Peter Vera, love to frolic about in our free time. Batman Book Club is also on Patreon, so if you like what's going on with the show and you want to help support the show and keep those generators running in the Wayne Manor study, just go to patreon.com/thebatmanbc. Now, thank you for listening to episode 181, Mask of the Phantasm. Going deep pull here. I can't do that alone. Pulling in another Ryan. We're going all out here, doubling up on the Ryans here. You've heard his voice here many a times. He's like my adaptation partner at this point. Ryan Haas, everybody. The crowd goes wild. I thought about that for this. I'm like, aside from the Batman Forever novelization,
right?
I think every adaptation you've been on.
Good.
Yeah.
Good.
Keep it going.
It keeps the book in Batman Book Club. It's such a good change of pace, really.
Yep.
And it's one of those things where it's fun to take the core comic book stories that this podcast and of course the character of Batman is known for, and to see how he's interpreted in other formats. And not just that, for things like the story we're talking about tonight, take one story and interpret it into a different format. I mean, one of the evergreen questions at the end of most normal Batman Book Club episodes is, would you like to see this adapted into animation? And we're starting with the topic that starts in animation.
Would you like to see this adapted in novelization?
Like the reverse doesn't even work.
So I mean, you were on, I mean, obviously you were on for Spooky Month in October, but episode 160 we got to do the Dark Knight novelization. I'm trying to think when. Yeah, it was after that. Okay. Our good pal, Sir Jay Yaws, he talked to me and he had talked to you about a possible novelization.
That's right.
Conversation for this show next year. I know there's
That'll be
somebody
fun.
else that has asked me. Well, someone else I'm gonna have back on, but they talked too about doing an actual book this time, not a comic book. Our Minnesotan friend Garrett, he and I have talked about a book that is not in comic form. So I think everybody goes to comic books, and rightfully so. But there are, and not just in the adaptation world, there are some solid novels that I think people will get to one of these days in this show and ask, can we do this book? And I'll be like, yes, because it's a good one. But let's go ahead and I mean, let's just talk now. Let's talk about Batman in honor of the 30th anniversary of Batman Mask of the Phantasm. Let's talk about the novelization, Batman Mask of the Phantasm. As the novel is called, though, Mask of the Phantasm, Batman, the animated movie.
Yeah.
So there you go.
Which, as you know, it took me many years to realize, like, it's a play on Batman, the animated series.
Yeah.
You know, they needed to show, like, it's related to the animated series, so they just call it Batman, the animated movie, because they can't call it Batman animated series, the movie.
Yeah. It's all connected.
But it's
This book What I could find is written by, I apologize, the name Geary Gravel,
Gravel.
Geary, Gravel. Okay,
I'm
there
gonna
we go.
say Gravel.
Okay. I'm gonna double up on the Batman Book Club rule. GG. And no, not Garrett Grev. GG.
Yeah.
GG here. And it was what I saw online. It was released in December of 1993, which would make total sense because that's when the movie was released, December 25th, 1993.
The
The cover of this book, I think, is really cool. And
It's amazing.
it's I don't say, would you say it's exclusive to the novelization? Like this
I
isn't a
think it
poster
is.
made for the movie? Okay.
It's like a painted, I believe it's a painted artwork. Yeah, that was created for this adult novel. Now
Mhm.
there are a few different versions of this. Yeah, like
Yes.
that's as a kid, like at the back of comic books and things, you would see like here's all the ancillary things you could get for Mask
Mhm.
of the Phantasm. You saw the movie, of course, and then there was the VHS later on. There's the comic book adaptation. There were like a few different versions of that. There were the specific toy line just for the movie, and then there was a junior novelization and a more adult novelization. And as a kid, I acquired the kid novelization, but I could never find the adult one, and it would always look so alluring to me because of that particular artwork. I was like, oh
Yeah.
man, that's probably a really cool adaptation, and that I didn't get it for years and years until shortly after the Batman Book Club started, because it got me thinking about it. The version I have actually says the first printing release is January 94.
Okay.
So
Let's see. Mine
don't.
also first printing. Let's see. This is, yeah, I mean, would this be the same thing as like comics sometimes? Of like a cover date of February, but it was released in
Could be.
December, like one of those sort of deals? Okay.
Could be.
Is either
It would make
December
sense,
93 or
especially if
January
the
94.
movie being released in Christmas. So maybe the book didn't make it out for a couple weeks.
So Bantam, looking at Bantam right underneath Batman, if you're
Mhm.
dyslexic, that could cause problems.
Oh yeah,
Because
yeah. First glance,
definitely
I
kept
always
looking
thought it
at
was like
Batman.
Batman books.
What up? Wait up, Batman books. Wait, is that a typo? Nope. Like it's Bantam. It's meant to be Bantam. Okay, got it. So anyways, so yes, this was released either in December 93 or January of 1994. Uh, we can totally skip why we chose this because 30th anniversary Mask of the Phantasm. You and I like to dip into these adaptations on anniversary dates. That's the Batman Book Club touch. Um, so well, I'll just say then I'll skip to the next of when was the first time that you read this?
It was this year. I mean, when I picked it up for the first time, I gave it a cursory glance and saw some really intriguing little passages. But for this show, this year was the first time I read it. I was waiting for the, much like most of the appearances I have on this show, I try to pick things that I've actually never read before.
It's good. It's a good motivator.
Yeah.
Because like you, actually, in 2020, that's when I bought this novelization as well. And surprisingly, it was pretty darn affordable. I'm trying to look right now because I looked earlier on eBay. Uh, Earlier on eBay. Yeah, now it's just not popping up. But it was a little pricey. And I know I spent like
Mm.
$7, $8, I think, in 2020
Mm-hmm.
on this.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, somebody's trying to sell it for $75.49. Free shipping though. So hey, there's a
Oh,
bargain for you.
there you go.
Yeah, there you go, people. But no, like kind of like you, that 2020, I've mentioned it many times on here of I bought a lot of, I dipped into the 90s in nostalgia and I bought a lot of stuff that year and this was one of them. And
Yeah.
I should also mention, so I did see online of like, this is a bit long out of print. Um,
Right.
if you look online, you can read it digitally, but it's through the, let's see, Internet Archive. So
Okay.
it's scans of the book. There's a way that you can read this, but aside from having the copy in your hand. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so these are always fun and a little challenging, I think, when we cover novelizations on here, which I don't know what this is, what number this is of an actual novelization for this show. But it's like in taking notes, I want to make sure that I'm, thorough, but
Mm-hmm.
also not too ridiculous and be like on page 4, this and this. So
Right.
I've done up a bunch of notes. You and I have talked back and
Right.
forth, and I mean we can just highlight because I think anybody listening to this show, they know Mask of the Phantasm
Yeah, we did something similar
extremely well.
for yeah, we did something similar for The Dark Knight,
Yeah.
and I thought that was pretty successful.
Oh,
Um
I guess I can say let's dip into just like a little bit of our history. So what was your
yeah,
experience with Mask of the Phantasm? Not the novelization, just the movie.
just the movie itself.
Yeah.
I did not see it in the theater, though I
Hmm.
do remember seeing plenty of advertisements for it.
Yeah.
That shot, that clip of the Joker, it's not too safe with the weirdos around. Like, I
Yeah.
remember that
Yep.
line very clearly. But I think it was just the theater in our town only had 2 screens, and as it's historically
Old
known,
school
that
theaters.
old school theater,
Hmm.
and it's very widely known that the Mask of the Phantasm was only in theaters for 1 to 2 weeks, 3 weeks max, and it was over Christmas, so it was a weird time for some people to in small towns like us to see it. So
Yeah.
our theater didn't even get it.
Hmm.
We would have had to have driven, 45 minutes to an hour probably out of town to see it, and that plus it's over Christmas. I'm sure my family just like I wasn't
No.
capable enough to be like, oh, we have to see this.
Yeah.
It's at the theater. Like, I probably wasn't able to articulate like, this is a movie in the theater versus this is coming direct to video or whatever. So my first experience was direct to video when it
Hmm.
came out on video. I remember getting I don't know if we rented it first or if we just bought it. I'm sure I was just purchased straight up. Because I got that clamshell. I knew that the comic book adaptation was in the back.
The mini.
At some point, the miniature version of
The
it,
miniature
yeah,
version.
the miniature
Hmm.
version. But I also have uh both versions of the full size adaptation, the newsstand
Nice.
and the Prestige, and I don't know if I got those before I saw the movie or after. I'm sure it was after. I'm sure. But once I found out that each clamshell copy had a comic book, every time we would go to any video store,
Hmm.
I would track down. I would go and see if they had Mask of the Phantasm, and I would see if that copy had the comic book in the back. I would pull out, and if it did, I would pull out the comic book and say, "Hey, look, there's a free thing in the back of this. Like, can I have it?" And I think I ended up getting 2 or 3 extra copies of the
Nice.
miniature Mask of the Phantasm comic book back in the day. So yeah, I've always been a huge fan of Mask of the Phantasm. I always wished I would have seen it in the theater. Always thought it was one of the best stories and adaptations of Batman that there has ever been. I got this. I remember getting the soundtrack CD,
Hmm.
and every time we would go to the beach as a kid in the summer, they had like, I don't know, like the Virgin Megastore or whatever, and we would go to that, and I would get a couple of new like movie soundtrack CDs. One year I got the Mask of the Phantasm and listened to the heck out of that thing. So it's always been a very important, like, milestone, like Mount Rushmore Batman thing for me. So it was really great to come back and explore this. Yeah, over the years I've gotten the toys and the action figures and even the new DC Direct thing. I've got a Phantasm like on the wall over there.
Hmm.
It's always been and it's like, it's so unique and special because of how unique and special the animated series was,
Yeah.
and the fact that, like, even though they've done other really good Batman animated movies since This one is always feels different and special because it was the first one, because it was theatrical, because of the way the story was constructed, like the big crux of the story was something that I believe, like the seed of the story was from Alan Burnett. Like this was like from him, and it got extrapolated to the other writers on the animated series team. So you can really tell like the story is told with a lot of like conviction, and it feels like very decidedly different than your standard typical Batman story or even Batman animated series story. It's darker. It feels like, the season finale of a series where like, oh, the stakes are different. Things are different, and it feels weirdly as anime influenced as the regular animated series feels. That Mask of the Phantasm feels like even a step further towards its like anime influences to me. It feels like another anime lens in terms of the new villain, like the Phantasm, it's and the identity of the Phantasm and how that ties into the love story. It's, I don't know, for whatever reason, it feels very anime-ish to me. And if you go back and listen to our episode on Child of Dreams, I don't know if I mentioned that connection there, but there, I feel like a lot of similarities there in terms of like storytelling and construction. It almost feels like a story that could be that without glance, like, oh, maybe this is who's telling the story. It feels like it's atypical. It's not like the standard like, oh, off the shelf Batman story.
So I know you and I are we're close. Like I know like year wise, yes, but like months apart in age. So a lot of times our exposure is pretty spot on. And that's how mine was too. I didn't see this in theaters. Ours was going uptown we had two video stores at one time in our small town, and we went up the one, and I remember they would have new release where you could buy the VHS like propped up there at the counter. And A Mask of the Phantasm was one. And it was in, you remember the Disney VHS cases, how they were different than regular VHS cases.
The clamshells.
Yes. Those, so that's what you meant by clamshell. And this one was black. And I was like, whoa. It came with the comic adaptation. It was like, whoa. And I remember one night my mom came home actually, and she had that and Mrs. Doubtfire. She bought them both.
Wow.
And I think it was to try and cover tracks that I wasn't the spoiled younger one. She was like, Ryan, I got you Batman Mask, the new Batman movie. And she's like to my brother, I'm like, I got you Mrs. Doubtfire. He was not in any way was he like, I want Mrs. Doubtfire, sort of deal. But that was like, I think the cover, so that it wasn't just like, oh yeah, Ryan, that Ryan is obsessed with Batman, so we got him this Batman. But I'm kind of like with you on everything that you kind of said on why this was special, because like this was like at that time in the 90s, this was kind of our only way of having the animated series like at our disposal whenever we wanted to watch it. Unless you recorded Fox Afternoons,
which I did, which I totally
did,
which
I did on some too. And it just felt like it was a bigger deal in that case because it actually had a Batman case, and all that stuff. So that was my exposure to it, was when it came out on VHS, and I watched the hell out of it. When it came out on DVD, I bought it on DVD and I watched the hell out of it. And then, I mean, you'd almost think every release that they had, like when was it Warner Archives did it, like the first Blu-ray release,
the Blu-ray.
So then I bought that, and then the animated series came out on Blu-ray and it was included, so I got that. And then they did the 4K release a couple months ago, and that's where I was like, I'm not going to, and I held off.
You need to.
Got all of them came with digital and got digital too. So this is just one of, it's in a class of its own. There are some really good Batman animated movies for sure. And if some people want to put that above Mask of the Phantasm, I get it. That's fine. I just think that there is a majority of people that just kind of have accepted and go with, this is the best animated Batman movie. And then what I really like with these novelizations and like in reading this, it's almost a bummer that the first time I saw this was as a kid because
Right.
I didn't really get to follow along the story and then have the revelation of spoilers, Andrea being the Phantasm, you know? And it's like I just
Yeah.
always knew she was because whenever I watched the movie, I knew that she was and I didn't totally follow it. And now
Mm,
even in reading the novelization and I'm like the novelization helps you kind of like I think appreciate more of like really great storytelling, you know?
yeah.
And this in like this story in itself, the whole Mask of the Phantasm story is just really, really good. And so I didn't
Yeah.
put the pieces of it all together. You know, it was like you just start as you get older, you can watch things differently. And so yeah, after I'd watched it, I don't know how many times, watching it as like an older teen, I was starting to view it a little bit differently. And I was like, oh wow, that's actually really smart. And some of those moments highlighted in the novel, I think, are also really well done. So I think I mean, we can kind of hop all over the place. Like number one, I think can just get out of the way, and I've done like a
Hmm.
list of like lines that are just different,
Hmm.
either different or included in the novel and excluded from the movie. I think that was the most of the cases where there was a lot of lines that weren't in the movie that were in the novel. And then lines that were in the movie were also in the novel most of the time too.
Right.
Um, I
Right.
think what I found the most was that there's some lines of Batman and Bruce that were like cut out from the movie that I'm glad they were cut out of the movie. And that might just be
Yeah.
because I've watched the movie so many times that now to try and add this line into it or
Because
something,
it's
it's
so
just,
committed to memory. But I
yeah,
feel a
it's
lot
just
of
like,
it though, I feel it just the movie is so well paced that
yep.
you know it like it works in the novel, but like in the movie, the shortened line, it was with whatever editing is going on, it just
Mhm.
it works so much better in the movie.
Like
Yeah.
from the get-go, like one line in which the book starts like opening of Batman on a gargoyle and then goes into the
Mm-hmm.
crooks and a Chucky saw
Mm-hmm.
and stuff. Whereas
Mm-hmm.
the movie just goes right, like it skips the gargoyle part. But in that fight
Yeah.
scene in the book, you know, and Batman says, you guys just don't get it, do you?" And it's like he doesn't say
Yeah.
anything in the movie. And I'm like, yeah, that's the case where, you know, Keaton would always he would kind of under the impression in Returns of like less is more. And here's a case where I'm like,
Yeah.
yeah, I think also here, less is more. So I'm
Yeah.
envisioning that,
A lot
and I'm
of
like, yeah.
Yeah. A lot of those differences between novel and movie, you always wonder if it's is this just like, especially when it comes to dialogue, is
Hmm.
this something that's in the script that got changed or cut and that's just what they were working with when they wrote it, or was it a conscious thing that the writer changed
Yeah.
to fit a written narrative better? And usually with dialogue, if it's like not a new scene, usually with dialogue, that usually means it was that way in script, but it's always kind of hard to tell unless you've got the two side by side or you've got the author like telling you like what the process was there. But for the intro,
Hmm.
like um I thought the intro was really good. It's probably one of the, I even wrote in my notes, I wrote it's one of the, like in chat in that very first chapter, it's one of the better prose descriptions of Gotham and Batman that I think I've read in one of these novels to date.
Hmm.
um because the movie opens up with CG Gotham and credits, and it saves its Batman entrance for a big flashy moment. But I think what um Gravel was trying to do here is he has like an opening, I think, that tries to echo the end of the movie. Batman being iconic Batman and
Yeah.
launching off. I think it just starts him. It tries to start you
Yeah.
off at a kind of a like a cool like bookend. We're starting the adventure. Batman's in the city. Like you could almost, in my mind's eye, I was like, oh, you could almost see the bat, like if the intro of the movie of the CG Gotham kept going, maybe you could see Batman, as
Hmm.
described in the opening of this novel.
I
Um,
like that. I like that.
so
Yeah,
I like that
bookended him
opening.
on a
It kind of,
gargoyle.
and I like how it tries its best it to describe uh Batman's what Batman looks like and his methods of operation and everything for a while before just calling him Batman. Like it
Mhm.
really tries to like not just take the easy way out and be like, oh, Batman's here, everybody knows Batman, but it tries to ease you in as if like you've never heard of
Yeah.
what Batman
You
is, which
don't
I
know
thought was
what this
pretty cool.
book is.
Yeah, I know. You
Oh
should
wait, that's
know,
Batman. Oh my god.
but but I like that the book uh takes its time to be a novel,
Hmm.
you know,
Yeah.
especially early
Yep.
on there.
I agree. And I mean, we can jump all around and everything, but in the movie, of course, and then in the novel, they comment about like, what are they making? They're making counterfeit money in the
Mm-hmm.
novel. And so this was what I found myself that was really funny. You and I were on the same page of we were both not together, but like we were both watching the movie and then we were going to read. Well, because
Mm-hmm.
I kept questioning, wait, is this in the movie or is this in the like I was
Yeah.
just doing that
Yeah.
back and forth. I ended up watching
I
the
was
movie
trying
again.
I was trying not to watch the movie because I was like I wanted the book to be the book, but I know
Yeah.
the movie so well when they would hit moments like that I'm like I don't think the movie had the money falling out of the case, did it?
But a
Or if
really
that is that what that was?
a really nice touch in the Batman 89 comic adaptation, did we see the Joker $1 bill?
In the comic adaptation we did.
Okay. So much like that, excluded from the movie, this is, I mean, it's well, not the same. It's like a little similar. Later in this book, when Joker is talking to Arthur, he says that Sal paid him in counterfeit bills. And I thought that was such a
Mm-hmm.
nice little touch, bringing all the way back to the beginning, to where in the
Mm-hmm.
movie, even I'm like, oh man, that's just like one line. And that's like to
Mm-hmm.
bring it back around to something that's kind of like a fun, oh, I get it, to link it to something much earlier on. That's kind of like, it doesn't matter. They're making counterfeit money. They're there for what? You know what I mean? But it's just like a small little
Yeah.
touch there that
Yeah.
I thought was actually like perfect. It was just so funny because it's such a small freaking thing. Clearly I didn't miss it. Because you
Yeah.
just think mobsters have money. Well, they have counterfeit money. And the guy tried to pay off Joker with counterfeit money. And which Joker's like, I
Yeah.
knew it smelled funny.
Yeah. But it's little moments like that that just enhance the storytelling that's already
Yeah.
there. It's already present. It doesn't take away from anything, but it just enhances it. But if it's
In
not there,
how
it's fine
I
for the movie. So
yeah, and when I watched the movie again after I read the novel, it's like in my mind when
you're filling in the blanks that you've
Sal
read.
exactly. And which I
Yeah.
that's what I always think when if I haven't read a book yet and a movie based on that book's coming out and I want to see the movie, I'll see the movie then read the book because I'm like the book's gonna
Yeah.
expand the world. So I'd rather just
Yeah.
go in
That's
that
how you want to
order.
do it.
Hmm.
Mm-hmm.
So let's see. Something like as we move along towards the like they're at the beginning, the nice little exclamation point is of Batman stomping on the table to knock out the guy in the movie is not there in the book. It seems like there's a lot more fighting described in the novel than what showed up
Yeah.
in the movie, which is also
Yeah.
fine. Not a big
Yeah.
deal. Phantasm's first dialogue is "Your angel of death awaits you, Saul." Um,
It
Soul,
actually it's expanded too. You know, your
yeah,
angel of the waits you gaze upon your death mask
there you go.
is what the phantasm says.
Which is it's another thing that it's so small, but it's also kind of like weird. Where
It's
I'm like,
small.
that's too many
Like
words.
oh, that was it's too much. Or
Uh-huh.
was that supposed to tie into like what the mask, like the
Hmm.
phantasm's mask? Because, you know, again, like in the movie, the phantasm is never named, referred to as the phantasm.
Yeah.
And in the book you get, I mean, it's the standard, the newspaper people called the
Yeah.
creature the phantasm. But that's there. It's in the book and it's not in the movie.
Hmm. Um, Everything kind of plays out the same as normal. It's just kind of like location where in the book it describes things as being, it's on the rooftop compared to like a parking garage being like, not the roof,
Hmm.
closer to the top, but similar deal. When the car crashes, though, all that counterfeit money goes and starts raining, like falls out and starts raining.
Yeah.
In the book, it describes that he's dead. I guess we don't see the body that he's, wait, in the movie. See, now here I go questioning, like, wait, do we see him? We just hear the horn in the movie.
The horn. Yeah.
Um, all that, like, to me, I could picture it. Nothing jumped out as being too different. Jumping to the
Hmm.
press conference, I think was expanded. Summer Gleason actually had lines in
Hmm.
the novel,
Hmm.
and Arthur Reeves, like they paint a better picture. Hold on, not better. They paint more of a picture of, like, for us to jump to conclusions about him from the get-go.
Yeah.
Whereas in the movie, you
Yeah.
can just be like, oh, this is a guy that's just like pushing back
He's
against
another
Batman.
suspect. Maybe by the time you're starting to kind of suspect him, he gets taken out off the table, you
Hmm.
know? Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Um, I mean, it bounces around. I highlighted definitely that Alfred made a Vichyssoise reference.
Yep. Totally.
Here, us Bat nerds, we know Vichyssoise.
It's only a
Uh,
year after Batman Returns, too. So
exactly,
it's
yeah.
pretty
And there's
good.
something in this that, yeah, we'll come back to that also made me think about Batman Returns. When we get to the end. Um, chapter 5, though, at the time in reading it, a
Yeah.
guy's name Burton Earny.
Burton
First
Earny.
off, brilliant that's the name, Burton Earny. I laughed and even said it like out loud. I'm like, Burton Earny. Hey, Bert.
Yeah.
Um, a chapter. He is basically, we get this little backstory on this guy named Burton Earny, who was there of that incident. I thought the placement was weird in that we jumped from that big incident in the car crash and everything. Then we went to the press conference, and then we got
And then we
in the
went
Bat
back.
Cave, and then we went back to this
Hmm.
guy who
Yeah.
we get his little story of he watched the car fall and got the picture and the money falling and everything. And then that was it.
Yeah.
And then it just moved on. And I was
Yeah.
like, yeah, that's not in the movie. And I see why that wasn't in the movie. Why it kind of,
Yeah.
it
It's like,
seems
where's
out
this
there.
going? Because when I hit that too, I was like, okay, this has to be a novelism. This has to be a I was like, do we need to pad out the novel? Like, where is this going? This is going somewhere. But it was like a one chapter thing, and then the book proceeds on as like nothing ever happened. And then I'm thinking like something's got to happen here. Like, I don't know how Burton Ernie is going to come back into the story, but there's gonna be a punchline in here,
And we'll put a
and
pin on
there
the legend
is.
of Burton Ernie, and
Yeah.
he'll show up again here soon.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, two lines I marked down in the notes and I shared them with you because there's some lines in this movie. So much like what you said of earliest memories of this movie. One, definitely Joker, you can't be too careful with all those weirdos around. And then
Yeah.
the image of Batman running after Phantasm there in the parking garage where we're looking at him as he's running
Right.
towards the camera.
Right.
That was everywhere. That was the back of the movie case. Like those two
Yeah. Yeah.
images would
Yeah.
always stick in my mind for
Yeah.
this movie. There's also lines that really stick out. Harley Quinn as is it Miss Bambi? Miss Bambi. He says the I word,
Yeah.
engagement.
Engagement.
That
Yeah.
always makes me laugh. And as well as when she says later on, and she's like, Brucey, where are you? Which
Yeah.
in the book, it's Brucey, where have you gotten to? Which seemed
Yeah.
really weird to say. And
Yeah.
then the way that Kevin Conroy, RIP, um, nailed the with Arthur, you know where you can stick it. I just always
Yeah.
thought like,
Yeah.
God, what a
It's
badass delivery.
yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Always loved it.
Yeah.
Let's see here. Officer Raymond T. O'Neill and his
Yep.
new partner Harvey T. Bullock in the flashback when Bruce was trying out his night on the town and stopping some crooks. They described that scene, and in my mind was like, oh, okay, yeah, this is in the movie, where Bullock does the spitting of his coffee on the windshield, except in the movie, Bullock
Yep.
calls him Jonesy. So,
Okay.
okay, not a big deal, but
Yeah.
just different names. So now I'm really curious on because the guy in the movie looks like, oh, we've seen this guy popping up with GCPD in the series and
Mm-hmm.
stuff. And so it's just
Mm-hmm.
like a little thing to like when
Mm-hmm.
I watch, I'm just gonna keep an eye out and keep my ears popped sort of deal. Because Montoya's even referenced later on in the book
Okay.
too.
Yeah.
Um, let's see, Bruce, where are you? A small thing.
But I
It's
like
it.
but I like that chapter though too. I mean,
Mhm.
but just because Bullock is more of a player in this story than Gordon, really.
He really
Gordon,
is. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Good point.
yeah, yeah, and
Gordon's taken off the
that's
table like really
he
early on,
takes
just like in
himself
the
off the
movie.
table. He's like,
I,
I'm not,
yeah,
I'm not going to be part of any part of this.
I'll have no part in it.
I'll have no part in it. I'm out of this movie.
Mhm,
So
yeah,
like you see,
pretty
so
much.
Bullock is like, oh yeah, I want to take down Batman. And so Bullock's even in the flashback. So you kind
Hmm.
of get a bit more context. So it makes
And I like
sense
that
that the book would have more Bullock set up in there, more extrapolation of his character.
a little bit. When Bronsky goes to the graveyard, and this is something that I just think is, I'm not gonna say like what's the point, but I'm curious of like how this plays out because yes, when so many things are such small details, then like who cares? But also that's fun to be like, okay, so when at what point was it in the development? Who cares? So Bronsky's
Right.
wreath was black. It's described as black when he's at the graveyard to go
Mm-hmm.
lay it on Chucky's
Mm-hmm.
tombstone. In the
Mm-hmm.
movie, it's a green wreath.
Mm-hmm.
Smallest freaking detail. But do you just think like did old Gigi here just think, ha, I'm gonna mess with them. I'm gonna make it a black wreath? Or was he informed it was a black wreath? And then in animation of the movie, they were like, no, we gotta have it green. Small detail, but it's also like
Yeah.
when we overlook or not overlook, when we look too much into things, these are the kind of questions that pop up in my head. Who said
Yeah.
this could
I
be
mean,
black and not green?
but I mean, it's so oddly specific. It's such a specific
Oddly
detail.
specific. Yeah.
Yeah. That you're like, oh, he changed it for, you know, it's like, was he changing it for dramatic effect because something bad is about to happen to him, or was it something script or the movie and it got changed later? Yeah, it's a good
Hmm.
question.
With that, and then Phantasm has a little bit more dialogue. Nothing earth-shattering, but just has a little bit more. In the movie, I think it's performed well where Bronsky yells for the boys, and they're like, Mr.
Yeah.
Bronsky, whatever you
Yeah.
say, Mr. Bronsky. In the book, they only hear like a crash, which is interesting
Yeah.
to me because in the movie, which that terrified me as a kid actually, because I was just like, oh my gosh, what if I ever fall in a hole and like a statue falls on me?
Yeah,
Um,
and then you're done.
but it'd be interesting of like in the book, the way it's described of a crash, and it's like, well, a statue falling into dirt, would that really make a noise? Heck, again, thinking way
Right.
too much into it. But
Right.
then the boys they find his flashlight and they do their own little detective work and tracking his footprints, which isn't present in the movie. They just show up
Right.
at the spot itself. So small
Right.
different, small description, but also it's like, okay, that's something that's a little bit different than in the movie. Let's see. Andrea and Arthur's sitting for dinner. We follow them to the table. So before we have that zoom on the movie and Batman's watching and reading lips,
Mm-hmm.
we actually
Mm-hmm.
are inside following them to the table, then cut to that. So there's just like a little bit more context to
Yeah.
their conversation. Nothing that changes changes anything between the two, but just marked it as something else that's different. While Batman is on the binoculars, he has his flashback to World's
Mm-hmm.
Fair.
Mm-hmm.
This is where we return to the legend of Burton Earny as
He's in the
Andrea.
past.
He's in the past they're at World's Fair, in which he's a couple years their senior, while Bruce and Andrea are having ice cream, which is not in the movie. They're having ice cream. And near them in the booth is a man a couple years their senior who's there with his mom and dad. His name is Burton Earny. And his parents are basically asking him, like, so boy, are you gonna you gonna do something with your life? And I'm like, at this point, it's like, okay, we're getting more to the legend of
Yeah.
Burton Earny.
Yeah.
Didn't waste much time in going back to add on to his story, but funny little touch, but also in the movie, scratch old Burton Earny, and you can just think too of where it picks up in the movie. I was like, oh, okay. Now when I watch it, they had their ice cream.
Yeah.
Not a big deal. Also, though, that's why we read this is to find those little small changes from the movie. Additions from the movie. Let's see. In the book, she says to Bruce, "You wouldn't look half bad with a mustache." Did you think of good old Matches Malone right away?
Oh, yeah, of course. Because
Had to
it's
be,
that whole
right?
scene in the movie, it's you start to see, oh, this is where Bruce kind of starts to get ideas about the future, and oh, there's like a prototype
Think about the
Batmobile, and
future.
yeah, exactly. And just to have another future Batman toolbox ism
Yeah.
introduced there was a good ad.
Yep. I think so too. It's one of those things of if you know, you know, but if you
Yeah,
don't, it doesn't, you're not like out of the
totally.
club or anything. You can keep going right along and you can take that completely as just a throwaway comment and it's not a big deal. Which are those are
Yeah.
always the best. I I marked down, but I don't know that there were any changes other than maybe a couple words different of Bruce checking out the automobile of the future, which as
Yeah.
we know in the movie is the Batmobile.
Well, yeah, when it
Another
talks about like jet thrusters and
yeah,
yeah.
battery turbines to power, turbines to
Yeah.
speed, battery to power, turbines to speed. Um, Another line that Conroy says perfectly, and I read it this way or heard it this way in the book, because it's almost like so cheeseball, but the sure, I'm sure, and like this totally almost hokey smile that's animated, but then Conroy
Yeah.
delivering it in the way too that that's a line to me that is like ingrained in my head of sure, I'm sure. It's
Yeah.
almost too hokey, but like in a way that I love it. Um, Andrea wants to introduce Bruce to her dad, and he says yes. And she says about like, let's find you something to wear. I thought this was a perfect spot where they could throw in there, Alfred, let's go shopping. They
Oh,
didn't.
yeah. Too
But
bad.
that's okay, but it could have. That was not mentioned. There's no in the movie, there's no montage described in here of they go to Macy's and,
Right.
make Bruce look nicer. But in the movie he's wearing the exact same thing and it looks fine. Like it's sure, I'm sure. Another thing with the coloring deal is that the old Gigi describes that the biker gang with the jewelry vendor, there we go, describes both
Mm-hmm.
of them and both are very different from what we see in the movie.
Right.
um they're definitely described in the book, the biker gang, of all sorts of like spiked hair and the bad boys from across the tracks, almost Mad Max looking
Right. Right.
dudes. And then the vendor has a green cap and a brightly patterned sweater, and yet in the movie they're totally like two different colors. So then again, it
Right.
brings a whole who is that because he was given a script with a description or he just made it up
Right.
and like they just did their own thing because in the end it doesn't matter.
Right.
And
Yeah,
then
it's hard to tell.
the dialogue from the gang, which I don't remember any of it because I also just remember in the movie of the one guy, he goes, sort of like
Yeah,
laugh.
totally.
Oh God. Like I don't like that guy's laugh in the movie. And though it's not described in the novel, it's like, man, I hear it though. That's you guys are
Yeah.
saying
Yeah,
whatever you're
they're not
saying.
gonna
Like,
describe. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, jeez. Right up there with Tommy Lee Jones, Two-Face.
Yeah.
Good laughs in the 90s. Let's see.
Oh, but we did kind of skip over like the
Bring
early,
it back.
like the early stuff where they first met, and like right at after the Bullock stuff is where, or during all that, that's where you have Bruce's one of Bruce's like first nights out before he's Batman, trying to battle crooks, you know arms spread, blah blah blah. Like, so you get to see more of it that expanded a little bit.
What was different in
And
that? Like, or like what was added in the novel with
well,
that?
I don't know
Do
if
you
it
have-
was necessarily added. It was just a different like interpretation of it where
Okay.
there was a lot more fighting, I felt, and there was a lot more moments where you got to see, I felt like you could see there was like almost a better interpretation of his thought process as he's going through that. In the
Mhm.
movie, you get a lot of
True.
it in this dialogue with Alfred later, where he's talking about like I was really really successful, but they weren't afraid of me. I felt like you could tell that even earlier, like during the scene, like he was. Oh, there was extra stuff in there about like his intonation as he's saying things of like, oh, Bruce, when he says like arm spread, like there was like a
Yeah.
tinge of like hesitancy. Like he would also, or like he landed and he would somersault and he like landed not perfectly, but like, but he was still sure of what he was doing. So it had a lot of like good dialogue in there about how he's not Batman yet, but he's got most of the tools down, kind of thing. And you could pick up on a lot of that in that scene. So I thought that was really well written.
Mm-hmm. Like it's like fuzzy, but I remember. So unfortunately, when there's a lot of like when there's action being described in the fighting and stuff like that too, I'm not like I don't hang on to that as well as I do dialogue.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So when there was like a lot of like description that I was like, oh, okay, it's like a somersault and a punch. And got
Yeah.
him.
And he does a lot of
Okay,
somersaults
moving
in
on.
that scene. He's like somersaulting over here, he's somersaulting over there. He had more
Jiu-jitsu.
dialogue with like the guard that they had tied up,
Mhm.
like moving her out of the way and saying like, excuse
Yeah.
me, gotta go be Batman, proto
Yeah.
Batman. I don't know who that is yet. Yeah.
You weigh a little more than 108.
Yeah.
Yeah, that'd have been great. Let's see. The proposal to Andrea. Now,
Mm-hmm.
this is in that after the proposal and yes and all that, and the bats come flying out of the cave. And he in the book, he says, quite a sight, isn't it? And Andrea says, I wouldn't exactly call it a good omen. I've always been a little bit afraid of bats. That
Yeah.
word, like, I like that. That's a good, like, that's a fun little nugget for us in reading it. How I
Yeah.
think the movie can do this, can give you the same vibe and feeling without that dialogue is that's where Shirley Walker's score comes into play.
Of course.
None of
Yeah.
that needs to be said, and yet I mean, us as kids are like, it's bats because he's gonna be Batman, sort of deal. They
Right.
make that work visually and through the music that I don't miss the lines, but that doesn't mean that I don't like the lines either. In the book,
Right.
I read that and I was like, nice. But in the movie, it's
Yeah.
like, nice.
Right.
Oh, let's see. The next day when the ring is returned to Bruce in the book, it says that he like cries of anguish, and I was like,
Yeah.
glad that was not in the movie.
Yeah. Yeah. Actually, if we get into the comic book adaptation,
Yeah.
then I'll have something to say about
Got
that.
some more comments. Okay.
Yeah.
Let's see. When my pal Sal goes and meets up with Joker, we in the movie he just walks up and there he is, as opposed to in this
Yeah.
Sal sees his silhouette and outline before interacting with him,
Yeah.
and Joker's machine
Right.
gun takes out, is it like the robot or no, the music? There's music playing, I think it says, and he shuts it off because then he um comments about the song, I believe. And then he has a good line. I like this line. I think it could have been I could totally hear Hamill saying it. And it's been a dog's age and an elderly pooch at that. And I'm like, oh my gosh,
that. Yeah.
there it is. Mark, are you here? That's a line that I think totally could have worked in the movie. It's great.
Yeah.
I think that's a great line. Whether that was
Yeah.
originally written in the script for the movie or not, I don't know, but I
Right.
like that line quite a bit. Something that I interpreted in reading, and then watching the movie, I could have just interpreted it. I could have been projecting. I forget how it said the description of like how Joker's sitting, but I envisioned from Batman
Yeah.
#1 where Joker's like his fingers are interlocked, but the two
Yeah, he does
index
that in the
fingers are up.
movie.
But like
Yeah.
in the movie, I think they're all down. It's not directly like that. So it's like close enough. I could have been projecting, but maybe it is, and I didn't go back and like reread it. But that
Yeah.
was just like the visual
Yeah.
reference I had in my head is that he's sitting like
Yeah.
that. And anybody listening, they know the image I'm talking
They
about
know.
from Batman
Yeah.
#1 of Joker next to the radio. And
Yeah.
thinking.
Yeah.
I commented down, let's see. Oh, I think it's cool. It totally works in the movie. And this is a total flipping that I think works great. Batman and Andrea's I always thought it was her apartment, but apparently she keeps saying the hotel. We get that scene where Arthur walks her to her door. In the novel, it's from Batman's perspective, and like
Mm.
him breaking
Mm-hmm.
into the
Mm-hmm.
room, and then he hears her and Arthur, and then sees them and that stuff. Whereas in the movie, you
She
see
comes in and then she knows he's already there.
yep, and turns on that light, and there he is standing there. And I'm like, oh
Yeah, and
yeah,
she's
I
not
think
surprised.
two differences, two mediums, both of them work like best, I think, for how
Yeah.
they did it, how they did it differently.
Yeah. Yeah.
Described really well. Um, let's see. The and the Phantasm, so um I don't know, Valestra's apartment, townhouse. After the explosion, Batman, there's no Batwing in the novel. Because the Batwing is what comes upon the Phantasm, and then Batman gets out.
Right.
He's actually just, he's on the prowl, and you hear like the grapple gun, and then he goes over to Phantasm, and then the scene plays out much like it does in the movie. But I thought
Mm-hmm.
that was that one I went back and I think I did a whole like watch and read. It's like, wait, there's no Batwing. No, there's no Batwing
Yeah.
mentioned.
That's another comic thing we'll get into.
Yep.
Yep.
And quickly, as you know from the movie, that shifts from Batman and Phantasm fighting to Batman chasing Phantasm. Or no, flip that. Chasing, then fight, and then GCPD chasing Batman.
Right.
There's
Right.
one of those funny little moments. Like I feel like in my head, what's popping in my head like right away is Batman Begins and Batman going through the cell and telling the two guys at Arkham there of like, excuse me, as he walks through.
Uh-huh.
It's a
Uh-huh.
sime kind of thing here of Batman
Uh-huh.
going by and there's a woman inside her place taking a bath and he scares the shit out of her. Don't need it in the movie.
Yeah.
Don't miss it in the movie. But it's a
Yeah.
fun little addition.
I love
like
that
3
kind of stuff
sentences.
though.
Yep. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's fun little things that take them or leave them, but
Yeah.
it's fun. Then comes it's chapter 26, the continuing adventures of Burton Earny.
Of Burton Earny. You're just like, what? Oh, here we're finally
More
we get back to Burton Earny.
more context of old Burton
Yeah.
Earny, and he is in Park Row helping one Dr. Leslie Thompkins and
Yeah,
her what do you want to say, her right hand woman Maggie.
Yeah.
Go ahead, describe this one.
I just was like, when you get here, like, oh, okay. Whew,
Yeah.
Burton Earny has a purpose here.
He does. We're invested in this guy
it's-
now.
It's his third appearance. And you're like, okay, it feels like this is going somewhere, because now that he's here in the middle of the book, I'm like, okay, he's going to show up. He's going to have some like big important thing that happens at the end. I don't know what it is yet,
Yep.
but at this point I'm like, okay, something in the movie that happened that's already in the movie he did or was responsible for. We'll see what happens, but it was a cool way to see, again, like what the novel format lets you do is it affords asides like this. It affords different perspectives from other characters. And the movie Mask of the Phantasm is rightfully so, really, it actually it deals with, you know, flashbacks and different perspectives and stuff centered around its main characters really well. But what this chapter does is it lets you see, and what the book I think overall does a good job overall is it shows you more of the perspective of Gotham as a city in reaction to this. And this is something that we talked a lot about in I think it was in our Dark Knight novelization. It had a lot of stuff like that also that I thought was good.
They're good people here.
Yeah, exactly.
As he says in Batman Begins, they're good people.
But chapter 26 here, it's a good way to show like how Gotham is reacting to this.
Yeah.
And you also get Dr. Leslie Thompkins inserted into the fabric of Mask of the Phantasm, which I think is a total gift. So it was really cool to kind of see this.
Absolutely. Total
and by
gift.
the time this chapter is over, I'm like, okay, I'm not gonna expect Leslie Thompkins to show back up or have a scene or something, but like I'm sure Burton Earny will show back up, but I know these pictures he's been taking, I think that's gonna come back up somehow.
So adding on to like what you said of you're seeing this community that around the clinic, in Tompkins's clinic, in which we know that characterization of her from the show. I don't know anybody who doesn't like her from the show. And how just because that area got bad, like she felt like, well, then I'm needed here more. And you see the people that rally around that, you know, and good old Burton Earny, he has fallen into that as well, because what he says, he showed up to help and like as a job, and he took with him an apple and crackers, and he saw somebody needed the apple. So he gave them the apple, and then he left, but then he realized he left his camera back at the clinic. Well, then Balestra's townhouse is close, so there's the big explosion, there's kind of chaos around and everything, and he goes back to the clinic, but then you just see as he's helping people, Maggie's helping, I forget who the mom is, but then her daughter is Tansy, who dresses up like Batwoman and calls for her Raggedy Ann doll, aka Robin.
That she's turned into Robin. Yeah.
Yeah. And you hear all of that and everything. And then you get Thompkins as kind of a payoff for this scene, and how she mentions about, I think she's the one that has his camera and is like, and you forgot something. And then also this and this. And Maggie kind of like talks him up to her of like, everything we needed done, he basically got done today. And Tompkins is like, well, we don't pay very much, but we have other things to help. And good old Burton Earny is just like, he's all in on this. And it's like, awesome.
Yeah.
So not only is we got to check in on Tompkins, we got to see more of that community as like a ray of hope in Gotham that's there around her. But then also we're getting more of good old Burton Earny that is like, oh, okay, this is the good dude that they've created here. Small thing, not a huge deal, but it's the legend of Burton Earny.
That's right.
And I too felt like we're not done with him.
Yeah.
So let's put a pin in that, and we'll come back to old Mr. Burton Earny here in the future. But it's funny because you and I were texting back and forth about we said Robin. And I was talking about this chapter because of when Tansy, aka Batwoman, calls out to Raggedy Ann, aka Robin.
Right.
You're like, no, that's not what I'm talking about. And I was like, oh, well, following chapter in the movie where you see that Alfred is bandaging up Bruce, because Bruce, hold on. After the whole, as we know in the movie, the total year one nod of, SWAT teams chasing Batman, and he puts the cape and cowl on the sawhorse and grapples it up to the helicopter and gets shot. And then, he's barely getting out of that thing alive.
Yeah,
Andreas
like he's bleeding.
I
think didn't they say like that was bleeding. One of the only times they let him show visible blood in the series or something? Like they
I
thought they
think
wouldn't be able
in
to
the
get away with it
movie that, and then at the end, and Joker gets his
at the end.
tooth knocked out and he has blood.
Yeah,
Maybe that's
yeah.
the only blood in the movie.
I mean,
But
compared to like the regular animated series, like they couldn't show blood like
sure,
that in a normal TV episode, so they got to show
gotcha.
it in the movie.
This is a theatrical release. Bring in the
Yeah,
blood. But
yeah,
Alfred's doing that. He mentions it's not in the movie, and this was the thing where I'm like, oh, it was mentioned in the movie. So the chapter we just read gives more context to that line in the movie, but it wasn't
right,
even mentioned in the movie that Alfred
right.
talks about how Leslie Tompkins is really worried about Batman. And was it mentioned in that last chapter? I think so, of like a little context too, to good old, I can't just say one, Burton Earny. Um Something about Tompkins doesn't believe the papers
Right. Yeah,
villainizing Batman.
she's got a soft spot for Batman.
Yeah,
Like she's kind of a champion for him. Yeah.
she's a champion for him. And so
He thinks he's being set up. Yeah.
it's it's nice that next chapter too then of she's referenced um and then Alfred gets a phone call.
Yeah.
This is the Robin you were talking about when we were
Right.
texting back and forth. So then
Right.
I did, and then you were like, I think we just spoiled each other because I
Yeah.
hadn't gotten to the point, but you remembered this part of and stuff like that.
From reading it earlier. Yeah.
But that's a nice check-in too, because I do remember thinking that it never ruined the movie for me. I just remember thinking of like, oh, where's Robin?
Where's Robin? I wonder what Robin's doing. Yeah.
Yeah, but not
Because
like
even to the
continuity.
point of thinking like this is it's like Robin, Robin exists in this part of the timeline, but like where, what's Robin doing,
Mhm.
so you just, yeah. Of course, there's plenty of episodes of the animated series where he's not present, but
Exactly.
this is the big movie, so it felt like maybe they could.
But your mind
But again,
can
it's like
wander.
there's
It's like, I wonder. Oh,
yeah, because there's like
wonder.
there's no Robin, there's no Harley Quinn. This could be before Harley Quinn
Yeah.
was even there,
Yep. So for me, like in reading this, that's like watching the movie, I can be like, this happens off screen. Alfred leaves the
Totally.
room. He
Totally.
talks to Dick on the phone and then brings the tray in and is like, oops, because
Yeah.
Andrea and Bruce are making out. So while he
Yeah.
leaves the room, he talks to Dick on the phone. That's my
Right.
mind continuity now. Thanks
Totally.
to Gigi and his novelization of Mask of the Phantasm.
Right. Yeah.
Let's see here. I mean, the rest of the notes that I have, I mean, they're all minor except for one, which just hang in there. The flashback of when the Beaumonts escape. Well, Joker is the one that's out in the car watching over the place. Well, we see in the movie that Papa Beaumont and Andrea sneak out the back, but in the book it adds Joker's in the car. He does hear them, but at that time he does see like a squirrel starts to fall, so he thinks it's a squirrel. He's playing solitaire in the car, but then he grabs a gun because he's going to shoot the squirrel, and he's kind of cheering on the squirrel to drop so he could shoot it. But then the
Yeah.
squirrel caught its feet and then took off, and he puts the gun down. I was like, oh shit, yeah, I see why that wasn't made for the movie. That's just like,
Yeah.
ah.
Yeah. But it's such like a weird, interesting proto Jokery thing.
Yeah, like I also don't necessarily see that for this interpretation of the Joker, but also this is like he wasn't the Joker though. He was
Right.
a hired gun or one of
Yeah.
the right hand dudes. Joker into Arthur's office mostly plays the same. There is a book typo though, in which it calls instead of saying Reeves, it says Beaumont. So GG. His assistant is Robert in the book. Robert calls and says, the Andrea's on the line. In the movie, it's a woman. She's not
Right.
named. I've always wondered, and it doesn't say it in the book either. What does Joker do to Arthur? We see the shadow on the wall or their outline, like their silhouette.
Yeah, I don't want to wow.
I
That's a
never is it Shadow on the Wall?
Yeah.
Okay. Who sings
You
it?
see the shadow on the wall. I think you see
It looks like I always thought he stabbed him. Like to me, it made me feel like
Like Joker venom injection.
but like I always wonder.
He's like knocking his hands out of the way, and he's like injecting him with Joker venom of some sort. Yeah, or Joker toxin.
And I was looking forward to it and reading here of like, oh, we're gonna get a description of what happens.
A description of it. I think. I mean, there's the Batman Adventure Manual that sequelizes the Mask of the Phantasm, and Reeves comes back in that, and I believe they explicitly say like what happened there.
Which
it's like
was
it's
that
like
one
or two. It's really it's the cover that's got the Phantasm. It's the Joker dressed up with his Phantasm, and the Joker's taking the mask off.
I've only read that
there.
like twice, so it's very fuzzy to me of what happens in that.
Yeah.
Future
episode, maybe. But this, yeah, that'd be a good future episode for sure.
Let's dive in. Oh, let's see. In the hospital, hardly any dialogue different. Here's another color thing. It says that Reeves is in a green gown at the hospital. In the movie, he's in a white shirt and shorts. Small, minor, but also another thing, like I've said a couple times already, of like, I wonder how that got there to being different.
Yeah.
Oh, let's see. Joker, he talks. So the flashback to find out what actually happened to Papa Beaumont. Joker standing outside. He actually talks. He says, actually has dialogue, and one's like, "I hope you didn't shop for two," or something like that, which is interesting. Then we're back at the World's Fair, like for the the final showdown. Joker dialogue. He says, "Budinsky's, I've got half a mind to demand a refund on admission," which is also like, what's not. It's different in the book. I think it might say like, over here in the movie, it's ingrained in my head. Joker from a distance when Batman's looking for him, he goes, "Yoo-hoo, yoo-hoo," and then he does the old like.
Yeah.
His legs up high as he goes and running and stuff, which is always funny to me. I envisioned the description of all the action seems very much the same, nothing different, as everything plays out like in the movie. To the Batcave, Batman talking with Alfred, dialogue's pretty much the same. Like everything starts to play out here, and he finds the locket. Then we get to second to last chapter. And I'm like, oh, we got to get to seeing Andreas on the boat, But it doesn't, the second to last chapter doesn't start off like on the boat. Instead, it says we have to wrap up the legend of Burton Earny.
And that's when I was like, okay, I know who Burton Earny is.
Yep, me too.
Oh my god.
Here we go.
They did it, didn't they?
Holy
they did.
Shit. Sneaky
devils. I was
devils.
so impressed. Yeah.
So his heroics of like his pictures, after looking over the pictures that he took from that incident way back in chapter 5, you were able to see that it was not Batman that was responsible for that car, traveling, crashing into the building. Instead, there's another character. He submitted that into a contest in which he won. Dr. Thompkins was so relieved that, basically Batman was, oh, there we go. The headline, mystery villain snapped at scene. Amateur Shutterbug clears Batman. Clears his name.
Shutterbug.
All is great.
Burton Earny. Yeah.
Make that be Ernie, amateur Shutterbug, he thought proudly. So he won. Let's see. It's submitted in the Times. Won a cash reward in which good old Burton Earny wanted to give that to the clinic. Now, let me just say this. Bert had purchased 3 copies of the Times, one to send to his parents, that were so worried way back when of what he was going to do with his life. One to keep in his room, and one to have framed because they'd asked him for his friends down at the center. When he had showed up that morning, they were waiting for him, all gathered together in the big room. After they had oohed and awed for a while about the newspaper, Dr. T had presented him with the ticket they had gotten for him with some of the money. 6 days in the Caribbean, all expenses paid.
That's the Nolan moment right there.
It is.
Nolan.
Yeah. Nice.
Yeah, I was like, oh my god, it's like they took it's like the John Blake approach
Burton Earny.
to
You
the
should
guy
use your
at
real
the
name.
end.
You should use your real
Yeah,
name. Robin. I like that name.
Robin. I know. But it
So
is.
then-
It's like they took. You go ahead.
No. It's okay. You and I, we know where we're going. If somebody's
Yeah.
listening, they know where we're going now.
They know where
He's-
we're going.
He's on the cruise ship. He's got a crown. And here they say that he's got a Three Stooges tie on.
Yeah, I thought that was interesting.
Yeah.
Flourish there.
And he saw a woman. Let's see. I want to get the description exactly right. Moon stood out from behind some high clouds. He became aware of the woman standing silently by the railing about 20 feet down the deck. Her skirt and jacket were black, which was why he hadn't noticed her when he first came out. Watched her for a few moments, like a creeper. He was wearing the crown. The one first up last birthday. He thought the Three Stooges tie looked very jolly with the moonlight hitting their wise, comical faces. He approached her and he said, "It's quite a sight." She says, "Yes, quite a sight." Her voice was soft, almost a whisper. He waited another 30 seconds, not sure of the etiquette involved when meeting someone at sea. Then he moved a couple of steps closer and stuck out his hand. "Burton Earny," he said. This tender moment. Burton Earny.
Burton
Excuse
Earny.
me? Are you talking about the Sesame Street characters?
No.
Woman made no response, staring out at the slow rise and fall of the waves as if she hadn't heard him. After a few seconds go by, he says, "I'm sorry, have you lost someone?" Her voice seemed to come from a very great distance. Then she answered him, "Yes, I have." Now, in the movie, it's, "Do you want to be alone?" She says, "I am."
I
Now.
am. Yeah.
Bam! They saw this guy in the very end of the freaking movie and said, "Let's give him a legend. Let's build this
For
freaking
real.
character out." So that
I
man
couldn't
that gets
believe it.
10 seconds of screen time at the end of the freaking
Yeah.
movie, he has
Yeah.
now, after reading this book, he has a whole freaking story.
He's got
Legend of
canon.
Burton
He's got a
Earny.
whole canon.
Canon. Yes.
He's got a name, a backstory, parents. He's in Bruce Wayne's past. He's interacted and with the Phantasm, like they don't even know it. You know, like he's so instrumental, and they don't even know.
This was the gift of reading the novelization. And
Yeah.
I'm not saying that
It's the kind of thing
as a
that
wise
you.
ass.
No, it's the kind of thing that you hope to get in a novel, to where
Mhm.
at the end of the day, like all of that's just like the movie. That's just like the movie. Like we're gonna remember the Legend of
Mhm.
Burton Earny. When you say like, "Oh, the Mask of the Phantasm novelization," we'll be like, "Oh, that was the major thing that they added to the movie."
So I feel bad for whoever has not read the novel and is going to listen to this, because they will
Yes.
not get to experience this the way that you and I did.
They won't get to
Organically,
experience the
just
John
unfolds.
Blake moment.
Ugh.
And it is a John Blake moment, because like when you watch
is.
The Dark Knight Rises and you see Blake, you watch the whole movie and you're like, there's something about this character. There's
Mhm.
something about him. He's going to be more than John Blake. And he turns out to be Robin. It's the same thing here. You read Burton Earny, you're like, but it's a weird experience. You read Burton Earny, he keeps showing up. You're reading the book having seen Mask of the Phantasm 1,000 times. And you're like, who the hell is this guy? Something's going to happen. And that I'm like, is he going to be the guy at the end on the boat? And he sure damn is. And it's delightful.
Chef's kiss.
Chef's kiss. Delightful.
Also, if you're ever wanting to approach someone, it's your perfect opener. Burton Earny.
It is. Burton Earny.
Burton Earny.
What?
How you doing? Three Stooges tie. Make sure you got that on. Complete the ensemble. And like a Burger King paper crown on your head.
The most obscure Halloween costume. Get a Burger King crown and a Three Stooges tie, and introduce yourself as Burton Earny. And two people on this podcast will at least know who you're supposed to be.
Yeah, God, I loved that. That's such a great capper. And then to know just like I said it was the second to last chapter because the very last chapter is chapter 38. It's half a page and basically just describes the last shot that we see in the movie, which is
Mhm.
also like awesome. And like you pointed out, a great bookend for the novelization,
Exactly.
and similar to how it begins. It's a good old
Yep.
circle. So,
Yep.
Boss, I always have to ask you now some questions.
Yes, you've got a question?
I'm
Now
ready.
I know one of my questions, but I forget how I phrased the other one. So let me do the one that I do know. In what is your favorite part of the novelization that is not in the movie?
The favorite part of the novelization that's not in the movie is chapter 26.
Chapter
Easily.
26. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's the most deviation, the most bang for your buck
Yep.
addition that just expands what's already there without taking away. It's only adding, and it's
Mhm.
a nice exclusive to this interpretation.
Um, I mean, yeah, I was just gonna say that my favorite is the Legend of Burton Earny.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, if narrow it down more,
Oh, to a chapter. Yeah, overall, like
then
all the Burton
definitely
Earny stuff, clearly.
chapter 26. Yeah, just
Yeah.
for everything like you said, that's just like such a good addition that, as you said
Mm-hmm.
now too, is like, yeah, definitely canon.
Mm-hmm.
I
Mm-hmm.
used to have like I don't remember. My other question would be something of like something in the book that you're glad wasn't in the movie, or something in the movie that wasn't in,
Mm.
but I don't remember what the phrasing on that of it was. Because now I just like it's maybe something that didn't make it to screen that you're glad that it didn't. I don't know. You don't even have to answer
Mm-hmm.
that. That's a half-assed question.
Mm-hmm.
Is there anything that sticks out to you that you were happy to read in the book and glad it wasn't in the movie? I'm gonna look at
I
my notes to see
mean,
if I have anything.
maybe. I mean, there's certain obvious things. I mean, of course, the Burton Earny stuff would be it wouldn't work.
Across the
The
board.
Rob the Robin scene, or
Mhm.
the Dick Grayson phone call scene that just kills pacing, or just things like that.
I
But
think
it's great in the novel.
I think mine would maybe be when Batman goes into her hotel room when Arthur walks her up.
Hmm.
It kind of answers my like I don't know, I'm kind of bending the rules a little bit. It was just portrayed described different in the book, played out different in the book than how it was in the movie, and I'm glad they
Hmm.
each took their own paths.
Yeah, yeah.
Um so I guess like final say on the novel then, the novelization. What would you have to say about Batman Mask of the Phantasm, Batman the animated movie, the novelization?
Yes, yes. I think it's a very successful novelization, and
Hmm.
kind of ends up being good as I always kind of dreamed it would be as a kid, looking at it from the outside. Oh, I bet this is cool. The only thing missing is the Batwing. Man,
Yep.
where's
That's
that?
true.
Where's that Batwing?
Yeah.
We traded the Batwing for Burton Earny, but
That's a good trade up.
yeah, it does feel like that good, like adult level, for the lack of better term, novelization, where it's more than just descriptions of the scenes. It really fleshes out more of the characters. You get more perspectives, uh and different viewpoints. Different scenes from the movie, like you said, are switched around, or this perspective has changed, and you get more of a read on the
Hmm.
setting and place in Gotham City. And it's just kind of incredible that, because when you watch the movie, well, I mean, let me think about how to phrase this around. The movie is really impressive because of how much flashback stuff there is, and it's kind
Hmm.
of really bold and risky. And I remember being super engaged with the movie as a kid, even though from looking from the outside in, an executive might be like, people aren't going to want to watch a love story with Batman. Like, kids want Batman or whatever.
Hmm.
But I remember loving the movie. obviously as a kid. But if you have never if you've never seen the movie and you start reading this book, you might think like, how in the hell did they turn this into a movie? Because it's like there's flashbacks and memories and intrigue, and there's a mystery. It's like, how's this going to possibly be interpreted into an animated movie? And I think that's a compliment to both, really. That the movie structurally lends itself really well for expansion in a novel like this.
Aggressive expansion.
Novels love to take these little like chapter asides and flashbacks and stuff like that, and movies don't do that as much. And the fact that it's this, Batman animated series movies, it's just even that much more reflective of the risks they took and how successful it was, because everybody rightfully so gives Batman Begins a ton of credit for being able to do a lot of the things that this movie did years before. But, Batman Begins, you've got the love story, you've got the flashbacks, you've got all these things like leading up to him becoming Batman. But Mask of Phantasm does a lot of that stuff, and it did it first. So it's kind of incredible to be able to have this extra expanded version of a story that we all love, to kind of keep going here 30 years later.
I just think it was a lot of fun. It's similar to, you've brought up the Dark Knight adaptation that you and I talked about. A movie I know so well, and so you're really looking for, are there some fun little additional moments, some clever little dialogue here or something like that mixed in, and there was. Same thing here. And for a movie that now for 30 years that I've been watching, and I know, so it's fun to spot those things that are different. And then of course to go even deeper and like some of these lines and start questioning, like, wait, was that in the movie or is it not in the movie? Wait, was there one word change? Hey, the color's different. He's not wearing a green gown. Stupid stuff like that. But then you get the legend of Burton Earny and stuff like that. And it just makes it's a fun for someone who's even gonna listen to a Batman book club podcast. I think it's a kind of thing that they would want to seek out to read also, because it's just like, well, sure, let's see what's in here. Let's see what's different. Let's experience the movie, the story in a different way. And it's totally worth it.
And for me, it was really fun to actually like not try to think about or catch the differences or let them trip me up too much, because I didn't want that to be a disservice to the book, really. And I think I started to think that once I hit the Burton Earny chapter, I was like, oh, okay. I'm going to let this book be its own thing for a little bit and see what's going. And that even in the Dark Knight novel, that point actually happens around like the Scarecrow stuff, where you have the whole aside with the Scarecrow, and this is what happens between Batman Begins and the Dark Knight and stuff. But the way that this book is written, I mean, it's a really well written book. It has a really nice flow to it. The way things are described and the way action kind of gets laid out. I just thought it was really, really nice, really well done. And even the additions, like, they're additions, but the way they tie back in, you have your chapter 26 Burton Earny chapter, but then the next chapter, Bruce is being patched up and Alfred's just saying like, oh yeah, Dr. Thompkins called and stuff. And so I feel like when I watch the movie again, I will be thinking about like, oh, I know who that is, or I know like what's going on in the periphery around the city, and it's just going to enhance my viewing experience the next time I watch it in 4K with its 4K upgraded 5.1 surround sound.
Exactly. Haas, wait, there's more.
What?
You sort of brought it up really quickly, and we're not doing another episode about the Batman Mask of the Phantasm comic adaptation, because we're going to talk about it right now, because you and I both thought it's so quick and brief We can tag it on the end of this
It's a
conversation.
breeze. Yeah.
This beast, the cover of this one, so Batman Mask of the Phantasm, the comic adaptation. So referenced it briefly earlier, but let's go ahead now. It when I looked online, it had a cover date of like the regular sized comic and a newsstand version released in January
Mm-hmm.
1994.
Mm-hmm.
Written by Kelly Puckett, penciler Mike Parabeck,
Mm-hmm.
inker Rick Burchett, and colorist Rick Taylor. This was also shrunken down in size and was popped in the clamshell case of Batman Mask of the Phantasm. Uh, Released later that year. It is also available digitally for
Mm-hmm.
$1.99. And it is, I think it's available in the recently released the Batman Adventures Omnibus that was released earlier this
Is it in
year.
the big omnibus?
It's in the big
Okay.
omnibus. Which I held off because I bought all the paperbacks like over
I
the
did
past
too.
3 years. And I
I got all
think,
of the things in order, like the 1, 2, 3, 4. I've got Batman Adventures and then Batman and Robin Adventures all on the wall,
yeah,
and it
I
looks
see
too
them.
nice.
I see them over his shoulder.
Yeah.
It looks good. It's in a more my style of paper also, and I guess the
Mm.
omnibus is a little more glossy. So, I
Mm-hmm.
mean, I've heard nothing negative about the omnibus. Worth it, great. I'm just like, oh, I don't think I need the omnibus because I have all the trades. I love the
Right.
trades. I'm good with the trades. So which is why I went digital and got Mask of the Phantasm on that. I did not check to see if it's on DC Universe Infinite or not.
It
So
is.
you can look that. It is. Okay. Let
Mm-hmm.
me let me rephrase. It's also available on DC Universe Infinite, but it is not
Yeah.
available on my favorite app of all time, Hoopla. So you and I
Mm.
read this really quick so we could mention it and talk about it because we're doing
And
Mask
it's
of the
available
Phantasm.
in the 4K. If you
There you
got
go.
the
Thank you.
4K
Look at
Best
that
Buy
thing.
version, you get a new version of the small version.
So Ryan
A
Haas has
reprint.
15 copies of Batman Mask of the Phantasm.
That is correct.
So you check this out again before for this episode. What version
Yes.
did you look at your one that came with your 4K? The one that
Yep.
you have in your
That
hands right
was my
now?
excuse. That was my
Excellent.
excuse to read the newest version I got. Yep.
I looked at it on digital. Do you remember the first time that you read this?
I read it when it first came out because I probably had it with the. I probably got the small one with the VHS, but I totally got the bigger versions as soon as I saw them
Gotcha.
in the comic store. So it would have been early '94, I'm sure.
I got the little comic that came with the VHS. And let me tell you quickly the tragedy involving Batman Mask of the Phantasm
Oh
comic book
no.
adaptation. I took that everywhere with me.
Mm-hmm.
Everywhere. The fact that it was
Because it was
small was
small and but still had like slightly thicker paper, so it was a little bit more resilient
it
than your normal
was
comic book.
it was so easy to take with me everywhere. And we
Yeah.
went to a family friend's house. And I remember I had it with me. I don't know why I was playing outside and had it with me. And I dropped it on their porch and it slipped through the wood on their
Oh
porch.
no.
Could not get to it.
Oh
I
no.
knew it was under there, never to be seen again. It
That's
stormed,
terrible.
it rained, all that, and I have not owned it physically since. So yeah, it was sad. Always sad. I always thought about that. So then when they did release um that with the 4K, I was like, oh my God, they're even doing the miniature. I actually didn't
Mm-hmm.
know for the longest time that they had a regular size of it because I just thought, oh,
Right.
this just came with the movie. It's only in little,
Yeah.
like the little
Yeah.
size. Um, so in reading this now, which has been the first time in forever, uh, this is so fast of a read, which is funny to
Yeah.
me because it says digitally that it's 63 pages. It may not even take you 16 minutes to get through it. Like,
Yeah.
it's just dialogue.
It really does.
And to
Yeah.
come from reading the novelization to the comic, it is such a like bullet points. The novelization expanding, whereas this is just like cutting left and right. Um,
Yeah.
Impressively
It's
so
one of
though.
those. It's impressively so, and a lot of the same facets come up when for some of the other adaptations about like the Batman '89 adaptation. It's like they're making this to the page count. Like they've got like you've got 60 whatever pages, you got to fit the whole movie in there. So that's why you have entire scenes that, you know, they kind of work, but I only know what happens because I've seen the movie. You know, you have one page of like Batman seeing Chucky Saul's car crash through, and then Batman turns around and then he sees the Phantasm leave. But that's like it's like 2 scenes or 3 put together, and it happens in like a page. Like the press conference is like 2 panel, you know, following it.
They
things like that.
They hit the big points that you need to.
Yes.
And then they just move it along. So I mean, it's almost like what you'd expect. The biggest thing that stood out to me was the colors of some things. First of all, Bronski's wreath is green yet again. So in two
Right.
forms, it's green, and one it's black. But his henchmen are dressed like in a bright, like a red hat, bright green, like trench coat, green pants, and it's like that's just using like one specific example, but it's so different because even Sal in his home, he's in this like sort of Christmas green chair, which is different than like the movie. It just seems like there's a lot of coloring choices that are like different from the movie. And it's just kind of interesting of like, I wonder, like, yet again with the coloring of that, and not bothered by it, just another curiosity of like, I wonder, this is even closer to the movie than the novel is. Like you're visually representing the movie here, and yet the coloring choices are different in a lot of things, and sometimes even minor choices. But the biker gang taking out the jewelry vendor is different in every single freaking form. Here, the one guy looks like he's oh my gosh, I'm blanking. Spielberg was attached to do this movie for this DC movie for the pilots or whatever. Oh my gosh, I'm blanking on whoever that is. Justin Kowalski knows.
The Blackhawks.
Blackhawks. The one guy looks like that. The jewelry vendor looks different than what's described in the book, as well as what shows up visually. So it's that aside, though. I mean, most of the dialogue's ripped right out of the movie. Couple little things. I just flipped now to when Sal and Joker meet up for the first time in the. Let's see. It's the book in here, and how he says, "Oh, Salvatore, why so far? Mi casa nostra is su casa nostra." The book, I think he just says. I mean, the movie, I think he's like, "Mi casa is su casa," and that's it. Like small things like that, to where it's like, oh, okay, so those only enhance that. Okay, I think the script had this. The book picked it up.
Yeah.
The comic had it, but the movie is like, let's make a cut.
Yep.
There.
Sure.
But I mean, for the most part, it's kind, I don't want to say bare bones because that almost sounds too like negative. It definitely manages to fit the story into its limited pages.
Yeah.
And then at the very end,
this
we do see Burton Earny.
Yeah, they didn't excise Burton Earny from the story. He's still there for sure. Yeah, like in terms of the colors, like I think that's probably closer, like comes more down to like the colors they had available at the time to use for printing.
Makes sense.
And they got close. And this is like the Batman Adventures team doing this too, right? So the renditions are really good. They look just like they should they just look just like the characters from the normal Batman Adventures comics, which means they look really close to, they're on model to what the movie is and what the animated series is. And it's really cool that we've got this version of it in a comic book form, because it's a nice opinion to the other Batman Adventures comics, because you know that series is all original stuff, which means it's not like we have adaptations of all the other episodes really of the animated series. Like we've got Mad Love, right? But
Yeah.
that's its own separate thing. Also, it was a comic first, wasn't it? Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, it was a comic first, and then they turned it into animation, that's another interesting
Yeah.
adaptation.
Yep. I agree.
So yeah, like it would be my, in terms of the hierarchy, their stack ranking of movie, book, comic adaptation, it would be third place for me in terms of
Same
like
here.
which one would you pick. But in a pinch, when you're a kid and you got a small comic and you want to experience that story,
Take it everywhere.
you can't really beat it.
Yep. Back that was when I couldn't watch things on the go. So you take the comic
Exactly.
because that's how you're able to.
Yep.
We can't sneak out without me asking you two questions on this as well. And Haas, this can be however, but favorite part of the comic.
Favorite part of the comic. Goodness. I mean, I'll go back to when I was a kid. I would never turn my nose up at the big splash page. Like I always love the ending, the ending of the movie, the ending of the
Yep.
book. Like the ending of this, and you compare this to the end page shot of the 89 adaptation, like they're really similar. Batman swinging over the rooftop with the bat signal behind him. Can't really beat that.
Yeah. That's a good one. I think, and I'm glad that I just like looked this over because we referenced earlier in our conversation the one page that is him getting the ring back morphs him into putting on the suit for the first time. It's a full page,
Yeah.
but it's full of 1, 2, 3, 4, like
Yeah.
6 panels, but the whole page tells the story. It's also got the
Of
second
him.
panel, which makes me think episode 3 of Star Wars.
Of Star Wars, no! And have you seen the comic adaptation of that?
No,
The
I
comic
haven't.
adaptation has the no just like this.
Just like this?
And
oh man.
yeah, and that's what I was going to bring up earlier when you said like in the novel, like it describes
Cries in
like
anguish.
Bruce is really anguished about it and stuff, and I'm like, well, that's kind of what they did in the in the comic adaptation, where in the movie he's just like, you get the score and
he just drops his head,
heartbroken. But yeah,
and that works
just
the
like
best. That works the
it's way
best
better
in my head. No.
Yeah.
Let's see. How about a favorite panel?
Favorite panel would be here on page 33. Really love the way that they do the bats coming out of the bat cave.
Yes.
And
nice.
It goes across multiple panels. Yeah. I think that's probably one of the more dynamic panel layouts of the whole book. That page, and of course the next one when he suits up for the first time. Those are both really good.
Suit me up, Uncle Alfred. Let's see.
Batman should have said that.
Yeah. Mine. Oh my God, I can never get enough. Let's see. This is page. Wait, hold on a second. Sorry, page 9. Give me a Wayne Manor exterior shot.
Oh yeah,
all day, every
totally.
day, and that's classy. It's classic, animated series. The moon shining and everything. Simple but effective. I was gonna say I forget what part, if it's at the very end or what, but Joker references the addition of one of his lines. He says something about like whatever he's describing. Da 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 da. Since the last Arkham Christmas party.
Oh yeah,
that was in the novelization. Was not in the movie, and it is here in the comic adaptation. And when I read it in the novel, and then also when I read it again in here, I just quickly just thought of Christmas with the Joker. Because I mean Arkham at Christmas. So there we go. I'm with you on, of the 3, the comic adaptation is third place, but also like massive fans like us. I mean, like, yeah, get it if you can, read it. It's something fun to just have. It's comforting to have. It's nostalgic to have. A lot of good things. So Mr. Haas, I think I'm gonna put a bow on that for
Oh,
our Mask
and
of the
there's no bat.
Phantasm. You got
There's a
something
bat.
else?
There's a bat cycle, but there's no Batwing in the novel in
And
the
then
comic.
there you go. Yes.
It
You
also
wanted to comment on
skips
that.
that whole thing, just like the novel. It skips the Batwing thing. So
Man, what did they have against the Batwing?
no, that's it.
Okay. Thanks for coming on and talking Mask of the Phantasm with me.
Yeah.
Yeah, why don't you go ahead and plug away anything and everything that you'd like.
Oh, well, we're celebrating all kinds of Batman, the animated movie, Mask of the Phantasm stuff. I'm sure there's a Batman. Is it going to be I guess it's going to be a Batman animation that's coming out where we're going to talk about Mask
I think
of the
so.
Phantasm.
Yeah.
So check that out. I'm sure that'll be out around the same time this is, or I'm not sure the schedule, but around the same time.
Around the same time.
If you're listening to this, you know where to find the Batman on Film podcast and all the shows that go on with that network. So of course, do that. Follow me on the website formerly known as Twitter at SMB_Ryan, and follow Super Mario Brothers the Movie Archive website at SMB Movie and SMBmovie.com, and we are releasing that 4K ultra high def Trust the Fungus Ultimate Collector's Edition of the movie, and it comes out in late January, so you can go. Yeah, so just go to find us on there or look up the Umbrella Entertainment 4K version of Super Mario Brothers, and you can still purchase it. It's going to be crazy. All features
a lot
are
of
amazing.
stuff included in that.
It's so good. Yep.
Excellent. For the Batman Book Club, go to the site formerly known as Twitter and Instagram. Type in at the Batman BC, where you can follow for latest episode drops, upcoming episodes, and sometimes even some giveaways. Make sure to subscribe to the Batman Book Club YouTube channel on YouTube. Link to that is in the description of this episode. If you want to support the show, there's a variety of ways that you can do that. Also, I already said at the top of the show, patreon.com/thebatmanbc, tpublic.com, type in TBBC for the Batman Book Club. And also, if you want to support the show, but you don't want to spend any money at all, it's 100% A-OK. The easiest, quickest, and most impactful thing you can do, go to the rate and review of this show, whatever podcast platform that you use. So Apple, Spotify, Amazon, Google Play, iHeartRadio, wherever, just go rate and review the show, because the more reviews the show gets, the more it helps spread the word. And as we all know, the word is panic.
Panic.
Now, we can't... I think it's almost a requirement that if you talk about Mask of the Phantasm, you have to end the show with Tia Carrere's I Never Even Told You. So,
yes.
For Ryan Haas, I am Ryan Lauer. And until next time, read more Batman comics.
Do that.
And now enjoy.